This week on The Wall of Silence, we finished up a 2-episode arc detailing the abuse of Cherin's daughter and her church's response to it. We will be moving on from her story in the episodes to follow, and yet it will continually be woven into the stories we continue to tell. Therefore, as a bonus episode available to all listeners, and a brief one at that, I'm taking a moment to commemorate some key time markers in how the Upper Midwest Diocese and the Anglican Church of North America have handled and responded to her story and other abuse survivors of Mark Rivera. I also want to note some developments across the ACNA related to the aims of this podcast. We'll start there. In the past week, 3 open letters have been made public regarding the presentment trial of Bishop Stuart Ruck. One is a letter to ACNA clergy. The second, a similar letter addressed to ACNA laypeople, that is, those who are not ordained. And another, a letter from clergy in the Anglican Diocese of South Carolina addressed to the ACNA court for the trial of a bishop. For Wall of Silence listeners not actively refreshing their social media pages, I thought I would make you aware of these letters here. The latter letter, from the Anglican Diocese of South Carolina, reads, "The fact that Bishop Ruck has not been temporarily inhibited and continues to function in his diocese as a member of the College of Bishops in good standing, while under 2 presentments, is an affront. We therefore implore the court for the trial of a bishop to meet promptly, as outlined by our canons, and the presentments against Bishop Ruck be adjudicated as expediently as possible. We further request that a new transparency about the status and timeline of the process be communicated to the victims and to the people of the ACNA prior to June. We know full well that justice delayed is justice denied. For too long, our silence has signaled a passive complicity with this travesty. Our gospel imperative is to be a voice for the voiceless, so we are compelled to speak up. The open letters from clergy and laity contain a similar approach, but are more detailed in their scope, making such requests as 1. Regular updates to the clergy of the provinces and the survivors related to the progress of the trial in a spirit of transparency. 2. The creation of a timeline that allows us to know what to expect and when, alongside clarifications and explanations of any delays. And 3, an update on the matter of the inhibition of Bishop Ruck, and a clarification of the rationale of inhibitions more broadly. There is a lot more in both of those letters, and I encourage you to read them and to discern if that's something that you want to sign off on yourself. Next, there's also been a major development within another ACNA ecclesial trial, that of Todd Atkinson, now a former bishop of the Via Apostolica Missionary District. He has been found guilty of the following 4 charges. 1. Inappropriate relationships with women. 2. Interfering in marriage and family relationships. 3. Inappropriate interactions with minor females. And 4. Abuse of ecclesiastical power through patterns of manipulation and control. Atkinson has now been deposed or removed from ordained ministry, and his holy orders have been removed. You can find the explanation of this on ACNA's website. Not only is this abuse case tragic and something we hope to tell the story of in a future set of episodes once we get there, but Atkinson was directly connected with Bishop Stuart Ruck. Via Apostolica is a missionary diocese canonically resident within the Upper Midwest Diocese. There are numerous examples of Bishop Ruck supporting and platforming Atkinson. Now let's get back to Cherin. Last week, in a set of posts, ACNA2 and some of its members highlighted how it's been 5 years since Cherin's daughter disclosed the sexual abuse of Mark Rivera to her. To quote from their tweet thread, "During these past 5 years, this little girl and her family have survived abandonment and vilification by their church community. 50-plus painful court dates and a harrowing criminal trial that only concluded last year. The ACNA province has poured salt in these wounds through 3 years of failed response to survivor reports that leaders in the Upper Midwest Diocese repeatedly mishandled their allegations of abuse against Rivera. 3 third-party investigations, 2 presentments, and 1 pending church trial later, this girl and other survivors are still waiting for their case to be resolved inside the church." Now, what struck me as I read through these posts is that nothing does justice to these words. They are devastating to read. too much to take in. In our culture riddled with anxiety and tragedies at seemingly every turn, what is one more church abuse case? But that is exactly what I want to commend you to do. I can't offer you Cherin's exact voice, but I can at least point you to her words. My hope is that you can put yourself in her place. Read her words as a mother or father, a sister, brother, or friend. Almost a year ago, she wrote a powerful tweet thread specifically addressed to Bishop Stuart Ruck, which I will post in the show notes. I hope you'll read it in full yourself, but here is some of it now. She says, "Remember my daughter, Bishop Stuart Ruck? The 9-year-old little girl who was sexually abused by your Midwest Anglican catechist, but who you failed to properly believe and support. The little girl whose parents you gave Reverend Ran York permission to confront about dropping the sexual abuse charges against Midwest Anglican catechist Mark Rivera. The little girl whose mom was kicked off the church vestry by Father York after reporting Rivera to the police. The little girl whose story you've seemingly gone to great lengths to dismiss and undermine, including holding a private Church of the Resurrection meeting to assure parishioners that there were no mandated reporting failures, pastoral care failures, or mishandling regarding her abuse. That little girl attended Church of the Resurrection 4 years ago today, on her 10th birthday, mere days after disclosing that she had been sexually abused by catechist Mark Rivera. She has now watched for 4 years as you continue to minimize her story and shirk accountability at every turn." There is one more important day worth commemorating. It's been 600 days since the Husch Blackwell report about abuse mishandling in the Upper Midwest Diocese was published on the ACNA website, and then was pulled down at the request of survivors because it contained privacy-violating details. The ACNA never re-released a redacted version of it, although you can find a redacted version by ACNA2 themselves on their website. Finally, I want to point you to an article written by ACNA2 member Connor Hansen, entitled "For Her." In it, he details why he came to join the ACNA2 team and dedicates it to the brave girl who decided to speak up about her abuser. Thank you for listening. Again, if you want to read and sign the open letter addressed to ACNA clergy or lay people, or to find links to other tweet threads and articles mentioned in this brief little episode, they will be included in the show notes. To conclude, here are a couple of segments from Connor Hansen's article. I joined ACNA2 last fall, something I had no idea I would ever do, because I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I saw firsthand the harm leaders caused to or perpetuated on others. I saw just how long a mother had been working to try to get her leaders to see. I knew that how I responded to it all now would shape how I responded later. I was also terrified because I knew how high the stakes, in fact, were at the time and always are when it comes to responding to and preventing abuse in the church. If I'm honest, I wasn't thinking a whole lot about abuse in the church until I read about how this young girl had the courage to speak of the unspeakable horror of what her abuser did. I wasn't aware of the ways in which church can hurt for many, even a good church, because of its uncontrollable association with previous trauma. I wasn't aware of the dynamics of grooming, of patterns of manipulative and controlling behavior by leaders in a spiritual context over time, which constitute spiritual abuse, of how crucial it is to think through good policy for churches, of the signs of narcissistic personality disorder and how it contains a wide spectrum of behaviors and traits, of navigating a person's own trauma with them and just how vulnerable they are. He concludes by giving the reason he writes, "I knew why I had joined ACNA2. I knew why I have helped cause a disruption in the UMD and the ACNA this past year. I knew why I will keep advocating for abuse victims and learning about abuse dynamics and tenaciously scrutinizing child protection policies, as well as Anglican constitutions and canons regarding clergy discipline. For every vulnerable person abused and hurt and manipulated, for those hurt by others in positions of spiritual power, for those exuberant and sweaty children so dear to Jesus, for her.